All right, team. We are back in the Fireside PM podcast, and I've got an amazing fellow Zoogler and founder of multiple companies now, including Optimizely and now Limitless. So, Dan, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Tom, for having me. It's an honor to be here. Excited to share some things that might be useful for your audience.
Yeah, 100%. We want to focus on Limitless, but I have to share something that just occurred to me from so many years ago. Was you were a co-founder of Optimizely. Prior to that, you worked on a presidential campaign, and I was just curious, what was that experience like? That must have been pretty epic.
It was pretty epic. I joined this campaign for this candidate who had come to Google. Actually, it was actually his talk at Google back in November 2007. You can watch it, where he talks about how he wants to take what we're doing at Google with evidence and science and feedback and data and bring that to the government. And the last thing he said when he came to Google was, "I want you to be involved," which is like a euphemism for give me a bunch of donations. But I took him literally, and I actually flew to Chicago 2 weeks later. Joined his campaign. At the time, he was third in the polls behind Hillary Clinton and John Edwards.
Yeah.
And everyone there, by the way, at that time were true believers. I mean, you didn't join, this is obviously Barack Obama's campaign. You didn't join Barack Obama's campaign back then thinking that you were going to be like, that was the ticket to being like the undersecretary to the deputy to the chief of staff to the White House or whatever. These are true believers. They're people who just believed in the candidate. And it was such a magical time. I mean, I look back at it as one of the most incredible moments in my life, because you're surrounded by people who are just true believers who want to do what they think is right, for the country. And really it felt more like, the pirates than the Navy, because, and David Plouffe writes about this in his book. He describes this as a risk reward mentality, which is basically the idea that because we were third in the polls, and like nobody really thought he could win, including my dad, by the way, which is a big motivator for me to go prove him wrong. We actually were willing to take risks, and we did crazy things like A/B testing, which is the first campaign to do A/B testing on our website, and that's what I ended up leading. And then ultimately, that's what inspired me to start my company. So it was an amazing experience. I highly recommend it. Anyone out there today who's thinking, boy, maybe I should go join a campaign, do it. It's like such an amazing experience that you only really, I think, can do once or twice in your life, because it's also really, really hard.
Yeah, I'm guessing the work-life balance wasn't awesome working in a campaign.
Oh my gosh, I have never worked hard. We were working, and I think back, I don't know how we did. It was 7 a.m. to 2 a.m. every day of the week in the office, no breaks. And we would eat, deep dish pizza, drink beer. Over the length of the campaign, I gained 50 pounds, 50, from a completely sedentary lifestyle. And funnily enough, at the end of the campaign, I was like, oh, I'm never doing anything analytics related again. I am done with A/B testing. I'm done with analytics. Ironically, I ended up starting the next 12 years of my life on A/B testing. But it was definitely a very brutal thing to do to your body, but also one of the most rewarding things I've ever done.
So when I was at Google the first time from 06 to 09, I was working on Google Website Optimizer. And I remember looking at our dashboard and being like, oh, this account here is like doing a lot of tests, getting a lot of traction. And it was a landing page with like, they or you were testing like pictures of Obama alone, Obama with the family, and it was so exciting to see that kind of early adoption, because then I, as a PM, had reached out to other campaigns saying, hey, we got this free tool. It's integrated in AdWords, like whatever. And they were very like conservative. I remember like the Clinton campaign was like, well, like we're already using IBM consulting. They, we don't really try new things. And I was like, well, you're going to miss out, but I'm glad you guys were so forward thinking. And I personally remember caucusing for Senator Obama in Washington State. And at that time, there were a lot of people like, it was not a fait accompli, even when we got to Washington, because it was all like, well, he should wait his turn and yada, yada. So kudos to you, man. That's a once in a lifetime experience you had.
It was. And I have to give Google Website Optimizer huge credit where it's deserved, because it was actually, kind of perfect circumstance, because I joined in November 2007 And I looked around, it's like, I don't know how to help. Like, I'm a computer scientist. I know how to make programs. I know, like, but these are all brilliant people, but in an entirely different dimension. These are like politically smart people, great communicators, great, and so like, how do I apply what I can do, which is data driven and so this was the only thing that I thought I could be helpful with. It's just like, wait, and actually, you know what started this was funny. There was a person on this team. It was called the new media team, which is everyone that wasn't, TV ads or radio. It was like new media. So we were in charge of like the website and email, all that. And there's a person, Sam Graham-Felsen, brilliant guy. I think he was one of the first campaign bloggers back in Dean's campaign. Anyway, he had this video he made. It was just like a montage video of Obama at the DNC in 2004. And he really actually is more than anything, we just wanted to prove how good this video was. And that's actually inspired us to set up Google Website Optimizer, which was, let's set up this video on the splash page. The very first thing you see when you go to BarackObama.com. We said, let's test a couple other things. We tested 2 other videos. We tested a bunch of photos. We thought, let's just throw this cool, like black and white photo of Barack Obama, Michelle, and Sasha Malia.
Yeah.
And what was so surprising, this is the value of the scientific method, is like your initial hypothesis might be wrong. It turned out all of the videos performed worse than all of the images, including the one we started with. And this this picture I just described, the black and white photo, massively outperformed the rest. And the timing was perfect because we started this experiment December 2007. The Iowa caucuses was January 6th, 2008. So it was like right before, and he won that. And that was the huge surprise. And with this huge waves of traffic coming in. So it was like the timing could not have been more perfect. I don't think I would have been able to actually, frankly, honestly, if I had sought permission to do this, I don't think it would have been granted, because I don't think people even really understood what we were doing. It was more seeking forgiveness. And then once we saw the numbers, then it was easy to just justify, like, let's just keep doing this.
I think I remember seeing that test. So I'm just, it's just great to talk with you live, because as when you're building a product, you want people to use it, you want it to work. And so when it happened to align with things I was passionate about in my volunteer work, it was great to see. So I do want to talk about Limitless, and I know we have we only have a fixed amount of time, because we could spend a lot of time talking about Optimizely as well, which is such an impressive outcome, and kudos to you. Tell me about the story for how you decided to start Limitless, because a lot of people could say, like, wow, I had my big exit, I'm good, I'm gonna focus on other things. Like, what was the inspiration?
Well, I'm deeply motivated by impact. And I had an experience in my 20s that really planted the seed for Limitless, which was losing my hearing. I have a genetic condition called otosclerosis. And when I turned 30, I tried a hearing aid for the first time, and it was magical. To lose a sense and gain it back again feels like gaining a superpower. And ever since that moment, I've been on a hunt for ways that technology can augment human capabilities and give us superpowers. And that's what led me to Limitless. Limitless is a personalized AI powered by everything you've seen, said, or heard. We augment human intelligence with artificial intelligence. We don't replace human intelligence, we augment it. And that was the feeling I got when I got my hearing back, was not only the ability to hear, but the instantaneous realization that I had lost my hearing. Like, you don't realize, you don't know your own limitations. It's almost like, by definition, you're like a horse with blinders on. You don't know your own biological limitations until you've felt what it's like to overcome them. And that's the feeling that I've been chasing, since I turned 30. So over 10 years, I've been on this hunt. And fortunately enough, Limitless, came about at a time when, large language models became better and better. They're able to do a lot of the things that before weren't possible with all of this context of everything you've seen, said, or heard. And that's what has led us to where we are. And by the way, it hasn't been a straight line, a lot of meandering pivots and paths and learnings along the way, but it all started with the seed of an experience I had trying a hearing aid for the first time.
So what was the original MVP for Limitless, and how has the company evolved since then?
So the original MVP for Limitless was a product called Scribe. And just to set the stage here, this is March 2020, so the midst of the pandemic. Everyone's working from home, everyone's on Zoom. And at the time, speech to text started to get much better. The capability to take, now we all take for granted that, like, you can say something and the computer understands the words that you're saying. That wasn't always true, although it feels like overnight it has become true. And so we thought this brilliant idea, why not transcribe? That's why it's called Scribe. Transcribe the things people are saying on Zoom meetings and make it shareable and useful, and make meetings, things we knew. By the way, we started this company with this realization that people forget 90% of what happens after a week. it follows what's called the forgetting curve. So like that was just a reality of how our brains work. So why not try to solve that problem in the very specific and narrow domain of meetings, and specifically Zoom meetings? So we did that. We launched it, got a lot of users, still continued to grow. And then we realized everyone else was doing it. Like every week there's a new product hunt launch of some company doing some version of transcription and Zoom meetings. And so it became pretty commoditized, undifferentiated. And we got this insight around the time that Apple Silicon came out, the M1 chip, that boy, what if we captured more than just meetings? What if we capture what's on your screen, everything you've seen? That's what led us. And by the way, did it locally. So you respected your data. It was private. So those two things combined led us to the next major pivot, which was Rewind, which is everything you've seen, said, or heard on your Mac. And then we realized from there, we learned this amazing lesson that like, wow, if you're able to deliver on the value of the privacy that we could offer with Rewind, but in the cloud, then obviously there's all these benefits. You can access it from any device. We could support things like the Wearable. You could capture things you say in the real world, everything you hear in the real world. And that's what now ultimately led us to Limitless. So it's been kind of a story of these kind of two, I guess, major pivots, but each pivot felt like coming home. This is a Dalton Caldwell quote around what a good pivot should feel like, is like you're coming home. It's like it's like a more familiar, more true to what you want to do. And obviously with the benefit of hindsight, I would have started with Limitless, but you kind of need to go this sort of wandering in the desert for a while until you find the oasis that is the thing that you want to be focusing on.
Yeah, and it definitely seems to follow a kind of consistent curve. It's not one of these pivots where it's like, oh, we went from one space to like a completely other one. You started with understanding meetings, to then understanding everything on your computer, to now just being with you all the time. That's super exciting. I have to ask you, there have been other kind of high profile wearable AI launches. Like, what's your view on what the industry has learned, in the last year, and how are you making sure that Limitless is, wearable really is as successful as it can be?
So I'll answer your question by telling you the worst thing I learned at Google, because it's the answer to your question, which is when I worked at Google, and you might have had this experience as well, Google really valued the sophistication of technology. It almost was more important than the problems we were trying to solve. And Google had learned that was important early on. It was kind of part of the culture. It's like better search ranking, better search quality, better ads quality, the better the business did. But the vast majority of problems in this world are better tackled by obsessing over the problem, not the sophistication of the solution. And so I've learned this anti-pattern at Google. Google's like, oh, you got promoted because you built this infrastructure piece and everyone's using it. But like, really, if you look at the history of Google products, other than search and ads, they follow this pattern over and over again. Google Glass, Google Wave, Google Buzz. You remember these products you may not have heard of. Google Wave, what's that? But they're all basically started with, wouldn't it be cool if? Wouldn't it be cool if ... If a product or an idea starts with, wouldn't it be cool if you could have lasers on your chest? Wouldn't it be cool if ... You end up going down these paths of technology in search of a problem. And that is, I think, the most pernicious approach in Silicon Valley, because it's so easy as technologists to fall in love with the sophistication of your technology, how complex and how brilliant you are as an engineer to have created this sophisticated technology, and that you lose sight of the customer, the user, the problem. And so I think that's the biggest anti-lesson I learned at Google, and the answer to your question, which is, so far, unfortunately, the products in the category that we're generally in with this wearable AI have all fallen victim to technology in search of a problem. They all started with, wouldn't it be cool if we weren't glued to our phones? Wouldn't it be cool if, ... And I think that's when you end up, it's not that you can't build a great company that way. You can. It's just way harder. If you don't know what problem you're solving, how do you know where to focus? How do you know how to say no? And you end up, if you can't say no, you can't be decisive, you can't actually make choices, then you end up with kind of a Frankenstein. You end up with a thing that does 100 things poorly as opposed to 1 or 2 things well.
Yeah, 100%. And I remember that Wave launch with developers like holding their laptops in the air, so excited about what it technically could do. But I think we were still struggling with like, well, what problem is it solving? With the Limitless pendant, it's only been out for a very short time. I think I saw a video of you delivering the first one kind of to the first customer. What's been the feedback so far? Is there a particular use case that people are like, oh, it's really amazing for this?
Yeah. So the most, we've been dog fooding it extensively. I'm
Mhm.
wearing it right now. It is, to be honest, like it still has a long way to go. And the reason why is that in order to deliver on the true value that we see, and we've seen sort of glimmers of hope, that's the way I describe it. It needs to do a lot of things well. It needs to do exceptional audio quality. Like it needs to be able to capture crystal clear audio in a crowded cafe. We do that with beamforming. So the device itself has multiple microphones and it's able to adjust where the microphones point to the actual source of the audio to actually capture the audio of somebody's voice as opposed to the background noise. It needs to have exceptional battery life so you can wear it all day. And so that includes things like voice activity detection. And on top of that, you have to then have great transcription. And on top of great transcription, just actually this morning, we showed a video of amazing voice identification, speaker identification, being able to tell based off of purely the voice of somebody who they are. So I encourage your viewers to watch it. We just posted this morning. It's the first AI that has solved the twin test. I'm lucky I have an identical twin brother, and I actually had him come here next to me. We were both speaking, and it was able to tell the difference between our voices. So that is necessary. I'm just sort of building up to sort of where we're going to do
Yeah.
things like to-dos and as action items and assigning, understanding who says what in a conversation. There's a big difference between me saying I'm going to do something and somebody else saying they're going to do something, which then leads up to deeper level of introspection. Just earlier today, I was actually asking Limitless, how could I have been more assertive today without being aggressive? And it gave me a specific example of a conversation I had where I'm happy to share it if you want, but basically using just the things I say, the things I hear throughout the day, the promise of AI to be able to actually help me live a better life, to be more productive, to be more self-aware, to be better. That's the core of what we're trying to do, is help people be better. I think the potential for that is limitless. So we're just scratching the surface. We have a long way to go to really deliver on the true promise of this device. But the foundations are great, and the early dog fooding is fun. And I'll tell you right now, candidly, like I can't live without it. Like in the morning, I take my phone out, put my hearing aid in, I wear my watch, and I put my pendant on. And that's just the armor I bring to work every day.
That's amazing. How long does a pendant last before you have to recharge it?
So it is designed to work all day. I have
Mhm.
not run out of battery. I charge it overnight. And usually by the time I plug it in at night, it's got more battery than my phone does. The difference, and there's tons of stuff we still have yet to optimize there. So I kind of, our goal is about 100 hours of active, or I'd say of normal use. So it'll last well over a day. And then most people we think will charge it overnight.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. And you mentioned that it can be used in a variety of use cases. Is the primary one that you're prioritizing the workplace productivity and success, or is there like a particular kind of hero use case you're looking at?
Yeah, I would say the users, I'll start with the who, like the
Hmm.
people for whom what we're building is an oasis in the desert are people who are busy. They're in back-to-back meetings. They're juggling personal life obligations and business obligations and work obligations. And so to them, it's one seamless continuum. They're not in work mode and then like, oh, let me put on my work outfit. They have, for example, one of our top jobs to be done. We have a stack rank of jobs to be done. The top one, the actual number top one, is be able to quickly recall what was recently said. And the circumstance that we describe it is, it's literally written this way. It is, I'm about to leave to go to Trader Joe's. My wife says, don't forget the milk. I hop into the car, I get to Trader Joe's, and I think to myself, what the heck did my wife just tell me to do? That's the top job to be done. It's like, just quickly recall instantly. Oh yeah, great. Remember the milk. Got it. So that's like a perfect example. I mean, there's lots of work-related use cases for that, but like that's an example of the kinds of jobs to be done that we're really focused on. Is like, how do we nail that so that you don't have to write things down? And maybe the other way to put it is, anytime you write something down, that's something we're replacing. Because usually to write something down, you're trying to help yourself remember, and you need foresight. You have to know, what is the thing I might want later? It's kludgy. You have to pull out your phone or take a piece of paper. And so those are all of the jobs to be done that we're trying to replace over time.
So let's take that example. I identify with the spouse asking for something, and then you're at the store and you come back and she's like, "Where's the olive oil?" And you're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, that's why I was supposed to go out there." Um, what would be the kind of user flow like? So now I'm at Trader Joe's and I'm like, "Oh, what did Wendy want?" I pull out my phone and launch the Limitless app, and then the device is mainly like a microphone for recording stuff. Is that the way that it works?
Yeah, so I'll separate those things, the way it works and what the experience would be like. So the experience would be, and we have some things planned here that I don't want to spoil because we have a lot of imitator copycats, but let's just say it will be instantaneous. You will be able to instantly see what was recently said in a way that feels so delightful and magical that it'll be hard to imagine living without it. So I don't want to
Okay.
exactly steal what you'll feel, but you'll have this ability. It's imagine you had perfect recall. Imagine you had perfect ability. It may be another way to put it. You wake up in the morning, let's say you wear glasses or contacts. Imagine your memory being the equivalent of seeing the world in a fuzzy view and being crystal clear. So that's the feeling you will feel. How we do that, I'm not going to get into too much because I want people to really feel it for themselves. And underneath the hood, how it works, I mean, like the actual nuts and bolts, it is a Bluetooth microphone. It's got actually multiple microphones, directional microphones, omni microphone. It captures it locally on the device. It streams it via Bluetooth to your phone or via Wi-Fi to the cloud. The cloud does transcription. It does all of the things I mentioned before, speaker identification. It does it all in real time. That's really important because we're busy and we don't have time to batch process this stuff afterwards. And then it creates insights or value from that directly. So we try to be proactive, like the example I gave you, that what was the thing we recently said, that's pretty proactive. There's a lot of things we can do reactive, like asking questions. Any prompt you could give the context of everything you've said or heard is also something we support.
Yeah. Well, that's great that it sounds like you're doing everything to make it as frictionless as possible. Because I think when I think about that use case, the thing that gets me a little bit frustrated is like, oh, I gotta pull out the phone, gotta unlock the phone, gotta find the app, then I gotta ask it, what did Wendy say? Like, I'd rather just pull up my phone and not even unlock it and just have it on the screen, be like, don't forget the olive oil.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see, how that'll unfold. Do you see Limitless as a mainly a hardware company where the software kind of supports it, or do you still see people who will just use Limitless without the dependent? Like, how do you see the company's kind of product offerings
Yeah.
evolve?
So we really firmly believe in solving problems, not in the sophistication of the technology, like I said before. So
Hmm.
I would say we are focused on customer problems. To the extent that we can solve customer problems without hardware, absolutely great. Like I'm not a glutton for punishment. I have no ego associated with a little physical thing in the world being on people's chests. Like if there are solutions to your problems that software alone can solve, we will continue, and we have been focused on delivering that exceptionally well. Everything I, by the way, just described, you can go to limitless.ai right now and use our web app, our Mac app, our Windows app, speaker diarization, voice fingerprinting. If you have a twin brother or twin sister, pull them up, you start speaking, they speak, it'll show you exactly what I was just describing. The wearable is just a natural continuum. It's now conversations that are kind of hard to pull out your phone, and it's awkward to be in a lunch meeting and like taking notes. And so it's really, I think, a seamless experience across all those technology devices. So if I had to choose between your posing, I would much rather be a software company that happens to need hardware than like a hardware company for the
Hmm.
sake of having our, it's like a pissing match. Like I'm not trying to like put my mark on the world. Like I would happily, if you already have your phone and you love it, and the phone, by the way, that's the limiting factor, the operating system on the phone. If it could support, and hopefully a future version will, everything we want to do without you having to wear another device, I'm all for it.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. It sounds very tech agnostic and very problem kind of focused. So that's great to hear. What do you think, Dan, have been some of the hardest lessons that you've learned? I mean, I feel like when you talk to entrepreneurs, we always feel like our last venture, like, okay, yes, now I figured it out. And then of course you learn new things. I'm curious, what are some of the new things that you've learned the hard way at Limitless?
Yeah, I mean, I could spend hours on this. I mean, I try to always get better. So I'm always learning. I'm always trying to improve. I'm always trying. I do 360 feedback with my team every quarter, and I do truly believe that like I am on an arc of ever improving. And both as a CEO and as also as a company, we do retrospectives very regularly. So I'm a big believer in self improvement. And I'll just say candidly, if I knew what I knew now when I was running Optimizely, boy, would I be better. Like I have just so many things that with hindsight, that is the beautiful thing. It's both, I feel like I've gotten so much better, but with the beauty of hindsight, you know exactly what you would have done. Like if I could all I had to do is time travel to like 1 or 2 moments where like I could have meaningfully improved. And so, I think the list is very long. If in the way I would describe maybe the highest, biggest lesson that I've had to relearn over and over again, I would describe this lesson in one sentence, which is the main thing is that the main thing should stay the main thing. It's recognizing that the power of focus is really the biggest advantage you have as a startup, and never forgetting that. There's natural entropy into the organization, into the way people make decisions, where you just sort of dilute that over time. And always coming back to that is probably a lesson I've had to learn in lots of different ways. I've learned a lot also about culture, getting that right, making sure that you hire people who fit the right culture. I don't know. I could spend hours on this topic, so happy to.
Yeah.
If you're interested,
Let's double click into hiring. How do you try and find the right people for Limitless? There's a lot of talent in the market these days. You probably have hundreds or thousands of applicants per role. Like, what do you find useful to try and make the best selections possible?
it starts with really codifying your values. What are the things that you're solving for in the people you hire? And not only that, but like as a company, we define, if you can search this now, there's a Limitless culture memo. We write this out candidly in the public. It's a Notion doc that's public for the world. We talk about what are our values? What are the words that we would use to describe what we think would make us successful as a company? These aren't just like ping pong and foosball and like the kind of googly kind of things. And by the way, I had a very candid conversation with my former manager, Sundar, about this, because I think this is Google's biggest mistake. Ironically, Google's well known for its culture, but I think that's actually where it's made the biggest mistakes. And so it starts with that, codifying your values. What are the values? What do you believe in? What's the antithesis of those values that are also not just negative? It's not like integrity is a value. A good example is decisive. Decisive is one of our values. And there's an opposite to decisive, which is careful. Like careful is generally a good thing. You gotta be you gotta be mindful. What are the choices you're making in terms of your cultural values? And then when you interview people, you assess them on their ability to live up those values. And very importantly, you reference them. That's the other thing that I think a lot of people really, especially startups, underinvest in, is the power of references. Everyone we hire, even if they have unanimous top scores from everyone, we do 5 references on them. Hopefully some of them back channel as well. So I think those are the key things, and even then you still get it wrong a good amount of the time. That's why we do quarterly 360s, which sounds like crazy for a startup. Why would you do 360s? Shouldn't you just be shipping? But we find actually you do a lightweight 360 once a quarter. That's an amazing way for us to ask ourselves, how do we each live up to our cultural values? How do we give feedback on living up to our cultural values? It allows us to make quick, if we have to let go of somebody, we make quicker decisions when we do it every quarter. So anyway, that's just a splattering menu of options for folks who are interested in that topic.
That's great. In terms of if you could go back in time and change one thing as a co-founder and CEO of Optimizely, like what would have been, like, in hindsight, a crucial decision that you would have done differently that you think would have even increased its success further?
The ones I actually think, but I'm reluctant to share because I don't want to throw any of the bus, are some people decisions. They're people I should have fired earlier. TLDR. So that's number one. Number two is if I had to be really specific, me as a CEO being more decisive on who our target customer was. We started, in 2010, we started with this general sense of the mere marketing mortal. These are marketing people who are non-technical, who need resources, who don't have engineers who want to help them, who just want to make a change to the website to show how important marketing is and the impact it's having. That was the problem I was solving at the Obama campaign. Turns out lots of marketers have that same problem in their organizations, even today. We lost that focus when we started to build feature flagging and rollouts, and we started to appeal to developers. And so we kind of diluted. I think either path would have worked. And I can see this now because there's big successful companies who went down either path. And it was my fault as a CEO. It was lack of decisiveness on which of those two was the primary focus. And I think either one could have been big, successful, independent public companies. And we ended up kind of diluting our focus by focusing on two. Then the third would be, we just overhired. And I see this now with hindsight, we had a team of 450 people. Today, with Limitless, with 20 people, we do more in a week than we ever did in a month with 400 people at Optimizely, which sounds crazy. I mean, part of it is AI has helped us make us more productive and we're more experienced people, but we were just, I'm being honest, fat and lazy. We had too many people. We raised too much money. We spent too much money. And now, of course, you can see, because we sold the company, and the acquiring company has done a really good job of making the company efficient. It's at $400 million in ARR, profitable. And it's the same product. It's the same actual technology. In fact, there are things we launched that were supposed to be like temporary. There was a launch event. Optimize the X is a good example. We launched it. It was meant to be it's still in the product. We use it. We use Optimize it Limitless. I still see it there. This was supposed to be temporary, and it's like we totally. I think we lost sight of the magic of what we built, and I think we lost our way as we sort of diluted our focus and expanded in other areas.
Yeah, that focus point is I think a lot of founders go through that. And I'm sure at the time you were thinking, well, we could do both. Like this is a big opportunity. The software will scale well. We have all these people. Why not go after it? There's like it doesn't feel like a one-way door, so it's like less risky. What would you say to a founder who's kind of in that exact scenario where they're like, hey, I think if I can do this right, I could double the growth if I kind of straddle? What advice would you give them?
My advice to them would be, if you have something that's working, recognize how rare that is. It is so rare to have something that has product market fit, that is working, that people love. If you thought to yourself, oh, I've done that once, maybe I'll do it again and again and again in different markets, you're recognizing that's a very hard feat to face. And I'll be honest, I think I was maybe overconfident, overeager, over optimistic. And I didn't realize, frankly, how lucky we got that we stumbled upon a problem that was real. It could have been that this Obama experience was a one-off. Like I had this experience, and because we're building the product I wish I had in the campaign, maybe that's only for political campaigns. You can't build a big company selling just political campaigns. We were just lucky that it turns out like lots of marketers have the same problem, and we could build a great product that they loved in a market that was actually, we had so many dynamics in our favor. Like we had Adobe, who was sort of selling this vision about data-driven marketing that really wasn't delivering. So all we had to do was deliver. Like they were spending the marketing money. We just had to deliver. And I think we lost sight of that because we got over-optimistic, overconfident. And so I think my advice would be, if you have something that's working, cherish that, double down on that, keep doubling down. And never, mistake I constantly made was I just thought, how big could this market be? Now it's $400 million in profitable big market. I feel like we missed, I took for granted how magical it was to have something that was working. And I too quickly moved on to the next shiny object.
Yeah. That's such great advice. Let's talk about, we won't go into specifics, but hiring and firing. Everybody always says hire slow, fire fast. Rarely is that actually practiced. How do you think about, if you could go back in time, what's the process that you think you should use to decide when it's time to just part ways with someone versus like, well, I'll coach them up in this way, or I'll set clearer goals, or I'll do an extra one-on-one a week, like, because we all want to help people be successful, and we obviously hired people thinking they had a lot to offer. How do you figure out when's the right time to just part ways?
It's really hard, but specifically on your question of coaching versus parting ways, I'll give two pieces of advice. There are two attributes on somebody that are, one of which is like sort of the silver bullet, they'll make it work. The other one is like the opposite, which is like, if they have this attribute, it's almost never going to work. So the attribute that somebody needs that can almost always save their job is adaptability. It's being a learn-it-all. It's being willing to accept feedback and recognize that like they can constantly get better. And recognize that feedback is a gift. It's just one data point. It's somebody who says to themselves, okay, maybe I'm not performing, but I recognize that gap and I'm going to do what it takes to learn and get better. So adaptability, number one. If people have that trait and they're willing to sort of own it, then I think that you shouldn't just give up on them. And you want to know what's the opposite. What's the thing that you should basically give up on them as soon as you have a gut feeling? Defensiveness. If somebody gets defensive, if they lash out at critical feedback, if they don't even hear it, they attack messenger, that's just 100 out of 100 times a recipe for it's just going to not work out. And I've learned this about myself, where like, I'm generally a very amiable, positive, optimistic person. It takes a lot for me to give critical feedback to somebody. Like I do it overcoming a lot of childhood trauma, a lot of sort of like inertia around conflict that I just need to force myself to overcome. And if the person I'm giving this feedback to responds defensively, or recognize, or maybe even can't hear it, that's almost always a recipe for disaster, because if they're defensive, then it's like a vicious cycle. Then I can't give the feedback because they're going to, like, instead of like actually hearing it, they're going to, do the opposite. And that's, it'll never end well. So I would say if you're sitting this, listening here, and you're thinking somebody, I'm sure all of you who are CEOs or founders of a company or a PM, even, you're thinking like, there's somebody on my team. I wonder if they should be here. Ask yourself, do they get defensive when you give feedback, or are they adaptable? And if they're defensive, you probably should fire them today.
Have you ever had a scenario where they were initially defensive, but you were able to walk them back and help them kind of see the forest?
Absolutely.
From the trees?
Yeah. There's some people, you have to understand, like, this is, when you're talking about somebody's job, it is emotional. It is their family. It's their it's their dignity. So human beings react emotionally, and that's okay. I'm not talking about the in the moment reaction. I'm talking about like the fundamental belief they have the week later, like in the moment, people will feel hurt. They're humans. If you did a good job of being clear, like, they're going to feel hurt. Like, there's no way you can give somebody candid, constructive feedback if they have pride and ownership, that they're not going to, at some level, feel hurt. You just kind of got to accept, like, it's going to hurt a little bit, but it's also going to hurt the same way that ripping a Band-Aid hurts. Like, afterwards, you start to realize, wow, okay, maybe this is the right thing. And so I wouldn't judge somebody on their first impression or their first reaction. Give them a couple of days to process, talk to their spouse, come back to you. And if then they say, you know what, yeah, boy, I did overreact to that. And then, but honestly, like, you're kind of right. And actually, here's how you're wrong. And here's how maybe I should do this. If they're using it as a constructive lens versus a attack, then I think there's saving grace. But if, like, even a week later, they're like, Dan's a moron, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And there's sometimes I am a moron, I don't know what I'm talking about. But if that's their mindset around every bit of critical feedback, if they're constantly in this mode of like, and there's some people, by the way, who are just traumatized by other companies. I can see that. Like, they're just in this mode of like, everyone's out to get me. It's just, you can't get better in that mode. So, I wish them luck.
Yeah. I think that's brilliant advice, and sometimes hard to implement, because a lot of us don't, enjoy those conversations where you've got to, kind of have the hard conversation. But in the long run, it's probably better off for the person as well.
It is. Yeah. I have now learned, I've made this mistake in the past, or at Optimizely, I used to hire, I made this classic founder mode mistake that's now so popular, which is I thought my job was to hire great people and get out of their way, and sort of, and instead of delegating, I abdicated. I literally abdicated things that I should have been core to the company. Like, are we focused on marketers or developers? Like, that is a CEO decision that just nobody made, because nobody was, nobody had their big boy pants on. I should have made that decision. And so by abdicating some of these things, the company ends up being less focused. You end up being less decisive. And I also made the mistake of thinking that when somebody is struggling, I was doing the right thing by them by not layering it on. Like, let's just give them a break. They're struggling, they're having a hard time. What they needed me and their manager and their CEO is to just take it easy on them. And I realized every time I've done that, that was the opposite of what I should have done. When somebody's struggling, you need to give them the riot act. You need to tell them they're struggling. And you know what you should also tell them? You have confidence. You believe in them. They're there for a reason. And I think not acknowledging that they're not performing is almost the worst thing you could do, because they probably know it. And certainly their peers know it. They may not know it, by the way. Sometimes people are oblivious, but they may, more likely than not, they're thinking, maybe, am I doing what I need to be doing? Their peers know it. And if you as their manager coddle them, you're almost like you're doing them a huge disservice. And the beautiful thing is, the best outcome is you read them the right act, you give them clarity, you tell them what your expectations are, and then they deliver. Then there's no better feeling as a manager to helping people achieve things they didn't even think were possible, levels of capabilities and impact that they didn't even think were possible. That is a really fulfilling feeling. And I honestly, if I think back on Optimize, I don't know if I've ever felt that. It only took, it took only like 15 years of doing this job about 15 years. That's about it took for me to learn that lesson.
Yeah. And it's such an important lesson to learn. And now it'll be a superpower of yours. I'm curious, I've seen studies that showed in constructive one-on-one conversations, when the manager thinks they're being really hard on someone and they thought they read the person the riot act, it is very common for the person to walk away thinking like, oh yeah, Dan has some suggestions, but I'm generally like kicking ass. And then, you're like, no, I just read you the riot act. So it is something where you gotta calibrate appropriately and remember that a lot of people kind of selectively hear, and they really need to hear it directly.
Yeah. And it goes back to the problem we're solving, which is people forget. 90% of memories are forgotten after a week. I know, not to say that Limitless is designed to solve specifically this problem.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. I mean, people have, very quickly, especially if it's a, conversation that has high stakes, you tend to, there's a human bias. I mean, you just look at, the top 20 human biases, they're all kind of designed to protect you in these situations. And you don't actually hear it oftentimes. So you as a leader need to do the best you can to be clear. I always tell myself in these kind of conversations, by the way, I dread these conversations. There's some people who I'm just really impressed that they actually get energy out of like this kind of thing. And like maybe, and like the thing is, I never get angry. It's just not an emotion I'm connected with. So I don't know what that feeling is like to actually enjoy that. But I don't relish these conversations. But I know that if I go into this conversation and if I had to choose between comfort or clarity, if I choose comfort, them being comfortable and me being comfortable, they're not going to hear it. And so I have to tell myself, I need to get uncomfortable. I need to focus on clarity. How do I produce clarity? How do I make it clear what's necessary? And maybe actually not maybe, it will be uncomfortable. You just have to accept it. And so I've learned that the hard way.
Yeah. It is, it's a little bit counterintuitive because naturally we as humans want to be comfortable. And so it's so easy to go into that one-on-one and just like, well, okay, here's some tactical things. And you kind of like maybe give some hints and nudge, and then you go to your next meeting and it was very comfortable, but chances are that person won't be able to reach their full potential and it could get worse. And then you kind of have that hard conversation almost when it's too late.
And for people listening who are like, well, I have so much to deal with, let me just tell you how it will play out. So you have a choice. This is the thing, just like from a self-preservation instinct, I'll tell you why being clear is more important than being comfortable, because all you're doing is accruing debt. What you're doing in that moment is you're not giving them the gift of the feedback. They will not get better. They will continue to miss expectations. Eventually they'll likely part ways. Either they quit or you fire them. And then you're left holding the bag. If you're the founder of the company, no matter what, you will be left holding the bag. And I had this experience at Optimizing many times where I'll be in a meeting and I'll be like, I thought we talked about this like 6 years ago. And I look around, it's like all new faces. You will be holding the bag. So like, if you want your company to succeed, if you want your product to succeed, if you want your company to succeed, like you have to be willing to like take on that debt, then pay it on, then don't accrue the interest rate. This is a high interest rate and debt you're taking on. Just pay down then, and however it goes, it goes. But like, at least you should know that regardless of what you do or not, you'll be holding the bag at the end of the day.
Is that a use case that Limitless can help? Like, or have you seen people basically say, hey, I just had this one-on-one. This is what I heard. What are you hearing, or what's the interpretation? Because I wonder, like, could Limitless be that objective truth teller?
Absolutely. Yeah, it absolutely is. And it can. And, I'll go back to what I said before around defensiveness and adaptability. You have to be in the right mindset to want that. Because if you're not, then you're not going to do it. But it is, the metaphor or analogy I'll draw is it's like, an NFL quarterback who sits on the sidelines. They just threw an interception. Their coach comes to them and gives them a printout of, here's the picture of you throwing that pick. And this is what you missed. The safety moved here. Without that ability to introspect, to go back on the things that were done or said, you really can't improve. And I think that's where Limitless's real potential is in helping you identify those patterns, those cognitive biases you have, overcoming them, improving. Even today, it's amazing what it can do by just looking at the transcripts of what you say. You think you live your life. This is a biological limitation you have. You think you live your life being aware of what's going on around you, being aware of what you say, being aware of what other people say, but you don't. You're only getting a selective view. You have this cognitive bias to think you're aware, but you're not. You're a zombie. You're going through life, going through your emotions. You don't hear what your wife is saying. You don't hear what Tom just asked you. But ultimately, if you could go back and reflect and improve, that's how you actually get a deeper level of introspection. And I think Limitless can offer you that.
So maybe my last question for you before we talk about how people can learn more about Limitless and participate and benefit from this stuff. One challenge I've had with maybe adjacent tools is I won't read the summaries and the insights that they take away from meetings just because I'm jumping to the next meeting, or the summary's okay, or there's some interesting like metrics around sentiment, or, oh, you're using these inclusive words. This is great. But it's work for me actually. And so I'm curious, how do you help these busy people who are coming to you because they are slammed, and then now say, well, please carve out time to ingest and interpret and take in these insights that we've unlocked for you?
Yeah, great point. And by the way, our job is to not make more work; it's to take work away from you, to make your job easier and life easier. And the way we do that is, first of all, recognizing exactly what you identified. People are busy, especially our best customers who want us to solve their problems. They don't have time for yet another app or yet another task or yet
Mhm.
another to do. It's the opposite. And so the way I think about it philosophically from a product perspective is, how do we take things that you are already going to do off your plate? And so, if you think about a continuum of like a horse and buggy to self-driving cars, how do we offer automatic transmission? A lot of people are into trying to get to all the way this agentic behavior and do my job for me. Maybe they'll get there. I don't know. I think the best place to start is, how do we take a thing that you're already doing, like shifting the gears, and just make it automatic transmission? Abstract away the complexity of that. So here's a tangible example. Throughout the day, you're speaking, Pendant knows what you're saying, and you make commitments to other people that are to-dos. They're things that you otherwise would write down.
Mhm.
By just saying the thing that you were going to do and say, hey, Tom, or maybe you earlier say, hey, Dan, I'll send you this video later. You committed to making a to-do. But if you didn't write that down, you probably forget it. By just listening passively in the background, be able to automatically suggest to-dos for you based off of the commitments you've made throughout the day, already takes the thing off your plate. It's a thing that you either would have had to do, and we don't now do it for you, or it's a thing you didn't do but should have done. That's even more important, which is things that slip through the cracks. And maybe you accept it to do, maybe you don't, but at least you have it surfaced. At the end of the night, you go to sleep and say, hey, what was I supposed to do? I'm racking my brain. What was that thing I promised?
Mhm.
I told Dan I'd send him the recording. Those are the kinds of things that we take off your plate. That's just one example. I think there's a whole set of other examples around drafts. How do we communicate? How do you communicate? We as humans have a really hard time with a blank piece of paper. You want to write an email to somebody, or you're nervous about it. Wouldn't it be great to start with a draft, using the context of every bit of your relationship in the past? Those are the kinds of things that I think AI are really well suited to do for you, large language models in particular. And that's the kind of problems we're trying to solve for you.
I love it. I mean, and maybe this exists, but if not, I'll submit a feature request. If every morning you sent me a mail saying, "Hey, in the past you had promised to do these things that you did not do, and they're overdue. So like you kind of these fell through the cracks. Like go take care of them." To me, that's a must-read email versus the meeting summary after for other products I've gotten where it's like, "Oh yeah, here are a bunch of to-dos that you committed to." It's like, "Yeah, okay, I'll take care of that later." But if you can help me, it's kind of like where take your car analogy when it tells you like, "Oh, you've departed your lane." And it's like beep beep beep. If you had something similar, like I would be all over that because I hate being in a meeting and then someone saying like, "Oh, did you get back to me with that recording?" And I'm like, "Oh shit, sorry. Let me get that to you right after this meeting." So it sounds like Limitless is going to make a lot of people's lives easier, or maybe already is. How can people get involved? Is there only a paid offering, a free offering? There's the pendant. Like, how long does it take to get that? Like, what's the 411 on Limitless?
Yeah, you can use the Limitless product today. If you go to limitless.ai, we've got a free product. You can use it. Indefinitely captures what you say in meetings, in recordings, in podcasts. Captures what you say, captures what you hear. We have a native Mac app and a Windows app that also makes that a little bit easier, captures the audio output. And so that you can use today and enjoy. You get meeting preps. We give you the context of every meeting beforehand, meeting notes, obviously transcription, and then summaries. And that's the foundation on which the pendant exists. So the pendant takes that exact model and just brings it into the real world and real conversations. You can order the pendant today. We're very close to running out of supplies to get it to you in time for Christmas. But if you're in the United States and you order black, if you order today, we probably get you in time for Christmas. But we're ramping up production. We've been really overwhelmed by and thrilled by the number of people who've purchased this product. And our wait list is very long. So we're working through it, but ramping production is hard. It's only $99. So we're trying to build a product that's affordable to the masses. And I think once you wear it, you'll have a hard time imagining living life without it.
Oh, $99. That's totally accessible. And then is there a monthly subscription
Yeah,
after
so
that? Or
you don't need a subscription, but I think more likely than not, if you're willing to wear
yeah,
the thing on your body, you're going to want the best and all the bells and whistles. So there's a subscription, which is $19 per month if you prepay for the full year.
got it. Okay. Super exciting. I'll have to probably add my name to that list of people waiting for their Christmas delivery. Anything else that you want to share, Dan? It's been so fun hearing your story and having these insights shared with the audience.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the opportunity. I'll just go back to what I said earlier, which is if you're sitting there, no matter what your role is or where you are in life, just remember that the main thing is the main thing should say the main thing. I've used that mantra for work. I use it for my family life. I've made choices around what I spend my time and energy on. I'm actually really lucky to have 3 young kids that really focuses me in a way that I think my first startup, I didn't have that constraint. So I never really asked myself the question of what the main thing is. But when so imagine you had to live a world where you've only got a limited amount of time on this planet, which you do, and make the most of it.
Love it. Dan, thank you so much for coming on, and hopefully we'll continue the conversation maybe after Christmas and hear how the big sales went. But in the meantime, everybody should check out Limitless. Sounds like an amazing service. I'll be giving it a try myself very soon. Take care,
Thanks
Dan.
so much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye. All right. That was Dan from Limitless. Limitless.ai. I did a bunch of testing of meeting AI tools like Read, Fireflies, a few others, but I don't think I tested Limitless. So I might consider doing a evaluation of Limitless, probably the combo offering, the pendant and the software. Let me know in the comments below if you'd be interested in seeing my assessment. Knowing Dan, I'm pretty sure it'll be a very solid offering, and hopefully it would be a game changer. Nobody who doesn't want to save time, right? So some takeaways from my side as I reflect on this conversation with Dan. The first one is the whole reflection on retaining and changing out talent. And I think most of us do avoid conflict and we take too long to make changes. Maybe 20% will do the opposite, where you'll see like constant changes. But I think most of us probably err on the side of sticking with talent longer than makes sense for both parties. And you do have to embrace the uncomfortable conversations. And it is, for some reason, a lesson that sometimes takes many years for all of us to learn. But if you're earlier in your career, you're a new manager, I know you've heard it, hire slow, fire fast. I guess the way I would describe it is hire slow, have direct, uncomfortable one-on-ones early and often so that you don't have to fire later. But that's not as pithy as hire slow, fire fast. So maybe that's why I shouldn't be writing these things. But that would be my advice. I think the second thing that Dan talks about, keeping the main thing is also such a common challenge for really high potential, high achieving, high cognitive ability leaders. And part of it is because they know that intellectually they can do many things, and they generally have a mindset of possibility and opportunity and positivity. In reality, that rarely pans out. That it's the folks that really are hyper focused. And maybe it's kind of like that one-on-one analogy. Like, you should be maybe uncomfortably focused. I remember one of my startups was a marketplace startup, and we said, oh, we can support all of these verticals. And if you said to me like, well, what if your marketplace startup only did this really, really specific vertical? I would be like, well, I'm missing out. Like, why wouldn't I grab all these other users and boost my top line? So you might, maybe the motto there is be uncomfortably focused. And then maybe my third takeaway is check out Limitless, give it a try. And if you want a summary of all of my interviews, you can check out my Substack, firesidepm.substack.com. It's free. And then you can also listen to my interviews on the Fireside PM podcast. And if you need any PM coaching for yourself or for your team, you can hit me up for exec coaching and PM consulting. But yeah, that's all for today. Hopefully this was useful to you. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Dan's advice and the conversation. And in the meantime, have a great day. Do me a solid, like and share. And now let's get back to work. Bye, team.